Mixing sourdough. Basic ingredients and why. Why do we mix? We mix to hydrate the flour, incorporate the ingredients we have, develop gluten structure, and manage fermentation. We are working toward creating a dough that can hold gas and rise. For most of history, bread was simply mixed. Bakers combined ingredients and worked the dough until it felt right. Modern methods came later as bakers studied gluten and fermentation and noticed gluten structure, protease, amylase, and what was actually happening while the dough was developing. What we need to ask ourselves is, when do we add the ingredients for the breads that we are baking? I want to help you understand your environment and your dough, because I know that I can give you a recipe, but if I don't give you the information to help you tweak the ingredients or your timing, the recipe I give you may not work out depending on where you are in the world. I hope these videos are helpful, because part of the fun of sourdough is experimenting until you get to where you need to be for the loaf of bread that you wish to eat. I do hope these are helpful. These days we have many mixing methods. There's an all-in, Autolyse, Fermentolyse, Saltolyse, and Bassinage, or Bassinage, which I'm familiar with. If there are more, I'm not touching on them here. All-in method. For all-in, it is what it says. Everything goes in together. Flour, water, salt, levain, and any other additional ingredients you may have. In it goes, and you mix it either by hand or with a mechanical mixer. This is a great method if you don't have a lot of time, or if you have ingredients that may interfere with gluten development when added later during folding or coil folding. It is often better to add everything at the beginning and allow the gluten to form around the ingredients. Now, very quickly, let's talk about the enzymatic activity that happens during our mixing. Protease and amylase. These are my little beasties. It's easier to say that than those words. Protease breaks down proteins. Gluten. A little protease makes dough easier to stretch. Too much protease and the dough will start to collapse because the gluten is being cut away. Amylase. Amylase is good to have. It breaks the starch down into sugars, so it is more available for the yeast to eat.
That should do it.
If amylase is too active, too much sugar is produced too soon, and the yeast can overeat, and you may miss your optimum window for the bread rise. Autolyse, Fermentolyse, and Saltolyse are not just parts of a mixing method. When you mix your ingredients will affect the enzymatic activity. Autolyse works exceptionally well by adding flour and water together. All right, here we go. Autolyse. Autolyse gives the gluten a chance to jumpstart. Gluten begins to form, and your protease and amylase begin their enzymatic activity. This works well unless you have a very warm environment where the enzymatic activity gets jump-started and begins to break down your gluten sooner. That doesn't mean it's the wrong method. It just means it might not be the method for your environment. That's why I'm bringing them up. When you mix your ingredients, you may have, depending on your environment, more control of protease and amylase. Fermentolyse. For fermentolyse, you add flour, water, and levain. You allow your dough to rest and add the salt later. The benefit is that you jumpstart gluten formation while enzymatic activity and fermentation are already underway. This can be a time saver, but you still have to stick around for the folding. This absolutely feels more wet, but it will give me a more tender crumb, which truthfully is what I'm after. Saltolyse. Saltolyse combines flour, water, and salt first, with the levain added afterwards. Why would you do this? Because the salt slows the little beastie activity down. Maybe you have a cold day. Maybe your starter's not quite at peak and you're trying to save time. Saltolyse gives you another option for managing timing on cold days as well. Now, how do we work the dough? Once the ingredients are combined, how do we work the dough? Bassinage. Bassinage is a process of adding water to the dough during bulk fermentation. You're bathing the dough is how it translates from the French. Instead of incorporating all of the water at once, a portion is held back and introduced after the gluten has begun forming. Now, this is something I'm going to be trying in future. This is not something I have tried, but it is a technique I'm curious about. This is where another part of the mixing process comes in, the development of the dough. We have hand mixing, stand mixing, kneading, no-knead methods, stretch and folds, coil folds. Things that affect your choice: temperature, humidity, flour type, hydration levels, your schedule, and your experience level all affect which mixing method you choose. As touched on earlier, temperature may dictate which method you use for all-in, Autolyse, Fermentolyse, or Saltolyse. Temperature is a big deal when it comes to baking. The same is true of humidity. Flour type will also affect how you add your ingredients. What I've discovered for my own baking is that I prefer a longer hydration for whole wheat, rye, and oat flours. However, without adding salt, my dough may break down more quickly. I am more inclined to use the all-in method with certain ingredients and allow them to soak before incorporating everything with a stand mixer. So Autolyse, Fermentolyse, and Saltolyse may offer advantages when working with white or all-purpose flours. Your schedule matters too. If you cannot stick around to fold or coil fold your dough, maybe you want to put everything in a mixer, let it rise in the fridge while you're away, shape it when you come home, and give it a second proof, then bake it. I do not know everything, but I know enough to understand that each of these methods has its benefits and drawbacks. When you start working with more complicated doughs, steel-cut oats, mixed grains, and other inclusions, some of these methods become worth exploring. The goal here is to let you know there is no perfect method. If you switch from all-purpose flour to bread flour or move from a lower hydration dough to a higher hydration dough, every method will have advantages and drawbacks. It's the fun of sourdough baking. It becomes an experiment. Choose the method that fits your bread, your environment, and your schedule. As beginner bakers, if we're working primarily with all-purpose bread flour, Autolyse, Fermentolyse, Saltolyse, and the all-in method all work, but you will be able to choose the one that works best for you. I truly hope this helps.